Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down the 10.14 changes and just take a look at how the changes will affect each of the champions placement in the meta for the coming patch. So with that being said, guys, let's get started. So if we start off by taking a look at the champions getting buffed, first for Alistar, his Q cooldown is being lowered by 2 seconds at all ranks. So what this means is that your W and your Q are now going to be on very similar cooldowns. In previous patches, or I guess in this patch right now, your W is on a 3-second shorter cooldown than your Q, but in this coming patch, it's only going to be on a 1 second shorter cooldown. So this just means that your combo is just going to feel a lot better to use, because in previous patches you would have to wait around like 3 seconds for your Q to come back up for you to be able to combo with your WQ. But in this coming patch now, you're only gonna have to wait 1 second. So I just feel like it's gonna feel a lot better to play Alistar now. I don't think it's really going to bump him up on the tier list. I don't think it's gonna make him an S tier pick, but he's definitely going to be a very good A tier pick here for 10.14. So next here for Karthus, he's getting a bunch of different pretty nice changes. Health is being increased by 22, movement speed increased by 10, so they're reverting the nerf they gave to his movement speed a couple patches ago. Q damage increased by 5 at all ranks, and then AP ratio is being increased by 5%. Q damage to monsters, though, it is being lowered from 100% down to 80%, so that is going to hurt his clear speed a little bit here for the coming patch. His E is now going to restore mana even when the spell is toggled off, and the tick rate on your E, it's increased from 1 per second up to 4 per second. The damage is still going to be the same, but you're just going to have more consistent ticks there of your E. So the big takeaway from these changes here is how much does that damage decrease there to monsters on your Q affect his clear? Does it really hurt his clear speed that much? Because if it doesn't, then I can see Karthus moving back up into S tier for this coming patch here. But if it does really slow down his clear speed in the early game, if it does hurt it a significant amount, then I can see him still being an A tier pick. But nonetheless, with these changes, I do still think he's going to be a pretty solid jungler here for this coming patch. Next up here for Kha'zix, base health is being increased from 572 up to 575, so only a 3 base health increase. Q isolation multiplier, though, it is being increased from 2 up to 2.2. This does make him stronger for the coming patch. I don't think it's going to bump him up into S tier, but he's definitely going to be one of the stronger junglers now for 10.14. So next up for Pyke, he's getting a bunch of different changes here. So some of his base stats are being nerfed. MR per level is being lowered from 1.5 down to 1.25. Armor per level lowered from 5 down to 3.5. All of his other abilities, though, or a bunch of his abilities, are being buffed. So Q mana cost is being lowered from 70 down to 55 in the early ranks, and then it's actually being nerfed by 5 mana later on. So it's going from 70 to 75 once you get it maxed out. Q cooldown, it is being lowered there in the earlier ranks by 2 seconds. Q damage is being increased by 10. W movement speed, though, it is being lowered. So instead of scaling from 40 up to 60%, it's just going to be 40% now at all ranks. And then his E's damage, it is being increased there by 10 at all ranks. So overall, I do think Pyke does get slightly stronger for the coming patch, but people definitely do tend to sleep on base stat changes. If you just look at these changes here and totally disregard the base stat changes, then obviously it is going to be a buff for the coming patch, but base stat nerfs are a lot bigger than people usually expect them to be, and with the armor per level being nerfed there and the MR per level being nerfed, that is going to hit him it's definitely going to hit him a decent amount for this coming patch here. So I still think he is going to remain an A tier pick, but I don't think he's going to jump up into S tier or anything like a lot of people might expect. So Riven is getting a buff to her passive here. Damage is being increased from 25 to 50% of her total AD up to 30 to 60% of her total AD. So not the biggest buff in the world by any means, but it's going to make her a little bit stronger for this coming patch. And it's kind of confusing to me as to why they're buffing Riven out of all top lane champions. I feel like Riven's not in a terrible spot right now in 10.13. She's definitely not the weakest top lane champion. So for her to get buffed, it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but nonetheless, she is going to be a very high A tier pick now for 10.14. So a champion that is definitely in need of buffs for this coming patch is Sejuani, and she is getting buffed here. So 3 different buffs to her E. Damage on it is being increased from 40 to 240 up to 55 to 255. So a 15 damage increase there at all ranks in it. E cooldown on target is being lowered from 10 to 8 down to 8 seconds at all ranks. And then ally buff range, it is being increased from 1100 up to 1300. So I think this will actually put Sejuani in a decent spot for this patch here. She's still going to be one of the weaker junglers. I do think if anything, she now becomes like a low A tier, high B tier pick for this coming patch. So still relatively weak compared to most of the junglers, but she is going to be at least a little bit more viable here for the coming patch. And then final champion getting buffed is Zed. So W missile speed is being increased from 1,750 up to 2,500. So really nice buff here to Zed. It's just going to be a lot smoother to play him now in this coming patch. It's going to be more difficult for the enemy to dodge out on your combo throughout the game. So just overall, really nice buff to Zed W. The cooldown on it is also being lowered too, from 22 seconds at rank 1 down to 20 seconds. It's going to be the same once you get it maxed out, but this is also really nice because you don't max this ability out until last on Zed. So the fact you're just getting 2 seconds shaved off there throughout the majority of the game is really nice for the champion. And I do think that with these 2 buffs here, it's going to make him a lot stronger. He's going to be at least a low S tier pick for this coming patch, or a high A tier pick. I don't think it's going to bump him up to being like one of the top tier mid lane champions, but it's definitely going to put him on the verge and make him one of the better picks for 10.14. So moving on to the champions getting nerfed now. First for Ezreal, he's getting an E cooldown increase by 3 seconds at all ranks. So this is pretty significant, especially once you do reach the team fight stage. 3 extra seconds on your gap close ability can definitely make the difference, and it can make and break certain team fights. So I think that this will drop him down in power a little bit for this coming patch. I don't think it's going to drop him out of the meta or anything. I still think for high elo, he's going to remain an S tier pick. For majority of elos, he does drop down into A tier. So don't expect Ezreal to completely disappear from the meta, but he's definitely going to be a little bit more online or in line with a lot of the other AD carries. Now for Wukong, pretty underwhelming nerf, to be honest. Knockup duration is being lowered from 0.75 down to 0.6, so a 0.15 second decrease there on the knockup on this ability. I really don't see this doing anything to Wukong for this coming patch. I don't think taking 0.15 seconds off of your knockup is the biggest issue with this champion at the moment, so he should still remain an S tier pick for 10.14. So next for Trundle, he's getting a nerf to his W attack speed. It's being lowered from 30% at rank 1 down to 20%. It's going to be the same once you get it maxed out, but this does hurt his clear speed a little bit in the early game there. It does hurt his dueling potential in early skirmishes. I don't think it's going to drop him down into B tier. I still think he's going to remain an A tier jungle pick. I feel like he is going to be outclassed though now, where I feel like there's just going to be other junglers that people are going to want to pick now for this coming patch. Trundle's been nerfed, I think, 2 or 3 times now over the past few patches, and with this nerf here, I feel like a lot of players are just going to drop him. He's not really that popular of a jungler for solo queue. People usually only play him when he's broken, so the fact that he has been nerfed a lot here in these past few patches, I feel like he's just going to fall out of popularity. So next up for Varus here, he is getting hit pretty hard. His early game is getting hit the hardest. Q max damage there is being lowered from 150% down to 125% in the early game. It's going to scale up to 145% though, so once you hit later stages of the game, it's only going to be a 5% damage nerf. Q minimum damage, same thing here, or very similar nerf to his max damage, so it's going to be nerfed quite a bit in the early game there, so going from 100% down to 83%, but it's going to be 97% later on in the game. E base damage, it is being lowered by 20 earlier on in the game, so really big hit there to his damage in the laning phase. It's going to be the same once you do get it maxed out, but I really think this is going to hurt Varus quite a bit for this coming patch. He's like an S/A tier pick depending on the elo right now in 10.13, and this is definitely going to drop him down into A tier. I don't see him remaining an S tier pick with these nerfs for this coming patch, so I just feel like there's going to be a lot of other AD carries now that are going to outclass him here for 10.14. And then lastly here, I was getting my hopes up for some decent Volibear nerfs, but I don't know why I did that, because these nerfs are really not going to do too much for him. He should still remain an S tier pick, both in the top lane and in the jungle. So base attack speed is being lowered from 0.66 down to 0.625, and then W healing versus monsters, it is being lowered from 100% down to 50%. So it is a decent chunk of healing you're missing there from your clear in the early game. Does make you a little bit less healthy in your early clear, but for top lane Volibear, this doesn't really, like, that change doesn't really affect you at all if you're playing top lane Volibear, and I just think overall it's not going to be enough to drop him out of S tier. He's going to need at least like 1 or 2 more nerfs in my opinion to drop him out of S tier. And then lastly here, we got some changes to Ghost and to Predator. So for Ghost, the move speed on it is being increased from 20 to 40% up to 24 to 48%. So I think that if anything, these changes are just going to make champions that are already running Ghost in previous patches a little bit stronger. So for the Darius, the Hecarim, the Singe, the Nasus, they get a little bit better here for 10.14. I don't think these changes are enough for mid lane champions to start running this consistently. I know a few pro players like started experimenting a bit with Ghost on champions like Victor, Orianna, Syndra after the Ghost changes went through a couple patches ago, but nobody's really running it anymore. A lot of pros stopped running it. They're just going back to like either running the teleport or the barrier or the ignite. So I don't think these changes are going to be enough to make it meta on new champions. I just think it makes champions that were already running it in previous patches a bit stronger. And then for Predator, it is getting two different buffs for this patch. The damage on it is being increased from 30 to 90 up to 40 to 120. Cooldown is being lowered from 100 to 70 down to 90 to 60. And these are pretty good buffs to Predator, but surprisingly, it's still performing very poorly on a lot of champions that are taking it right now. You see it sometimes on like the Fiddlesticks or on the Nunu or on Gragas, and just overall, it still does perform very well on Gragas. Like Gragas is the one jungler right now that is running this consistently as his #1 rune. So I guess it indirectly buffs Gragas the most, but I just don't think it's going to be run on any other junglers really. Fiddlesticks can run it, but he's just much better with either like Electrocute or Dark Harvest, and I just don't see these changes being enough to make it meta on other junglers. So that's it, guys. That's what we're looking at for 10.14. I feel like overall the meta is going to stay relatively stable for this coming patch. I do think that if there's one role to look out for, it would be the AD carry role, with both Ezreal and Varus getting nerfed. I do think it opens the playing field up a lot more for that role, and it makes it so that you can succeed with a lot of different AD carries, or it's just going to make a lot of the AD carries on a very similar level now with both those AD carries getting nerfed. So with that being said, guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.